Hey, what's up everybody, this is Muse24, and today I'm taking a look at the Avengers Ultron Unbound collection. This is a collection of actually two different stories in the Marvel comics from the early 90s. Actually three if you want to get technical. There's one annual in there that's kind of a side story, but still ties into the first set of stories here. Despite the name being Ultron Unbound, it actually deals as much with Ultron as it does Vision, which is kind of interesting. I think that there's like 3 or 4 of these that came out right around the time that Age of Ultron was hitting theaters. So there's this one for Ultron and Vision, there's one that's Scarlet Witch, there's one that's Quicksilver, and there might be another one for Vision and Scarlet Witch. I don't remember exactly which ones were released beyond those 3. But it's sort of a throwback to some of the earlier stories of these characters, some of the more classic stories. I was kind of hoping that Ultron Unlimited would be reprinted for the movie coming out. I know Rage of Ultron was released with the intent that, that'd be kind of tying into the film release, and I love that. I've done a review of that if you want to check that out on my channel. But Ultron Unbound here is more of a classic Marvel story, more of Ultron being, evil killing machine with somewhat half-baked plans. That's sort of the thing that's entertaining about the old comic book storylines, is that they're a little cheesy. These are not as cheesy as some of like the ones from the 70s and early 80s, but there is, I'll show you in a minute with the artwork in this, specifically for the Ultron Unbound storyline, that there's sort of a notion that we're getting into the Rob Liefeld type era of character designs, with them being crazy disproportionate. Not so much with the pouches everywhere, but the character proportions are a little wonky in this. So, taking a look at the cover here, we have Ultron, some flames in the background, the title, a very simple side text there. That's pretty much the same for the Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch ones as well, just as Avengers Scarlet Witch or Avengers Quicksilver or whatever. There's Vision on the back, a description of what we get in here, which is the Avengers West Coast 89 through 91, annual number 8, and then Vision from 1994, issues 1 through 4. This is the T rating comic book, which is kind of standard for most Marvel stuff. There are some younger audience pieces out there, but most of the Marvel stuff that I've come across is either T or T+. And typically I enjoy the T+ ones the most, because it's like Venom, and I think Guardians of the Galaxy was T+. I think the current Guardians run as T, but basically we start off here with Ultron being kept in this adamantium shell casing, and he breaks out by hypnotizing some of the guards, and utilize these little nanomachines that basically devour the guards that are working there. This is also, I think, where we first see War Machine, or at least one of his earliest introductions, because I keep referring to him as the new Iron Man. And people suspect that it's Rhodes underneath the armor, but we have a very curious team of Avengers here. We have Scarlet Witch, U.S. Agent, we have Vision, we have Hawkeye, Mockingbird, Living Lightning, and Wonder Man. And that makes for kind of an interesting combo of characters and personalities there. We obviously have some facing off between Ultron and Vision. We have him collecting all these old body parts, because one of Ultron's staples from the older comics is that he always wanted to make robot wives. Why, I don't know. It's really cheesy and a really silly plan in the grand scheme of things, but it's kind of entertaining just for the sake of, this was, how they always wrote the character back in the day. So, in this storyline, he has his robot wife, Alchema. I believe he also has a robot wife named Jocasta, who shows up in the Vision storyline that I'll get to in a little bit. But obviously we have some introduction here of Hank Pym, as sort of a foil to the other Avengers, because he does get mind-controlled by Ultron for a little while, but then he ends up helping them with some of his crazy tech and all that. Ultron's plan then, in the annual here, where we introduce Raptor, which is basically a giant griffin man. Ultron's plan there is to use these devices to force dormant volcanoes to erupt, and they will, spill lava all over the countryside, different points in the United States, and kill off all the people, and he and his robot wife are going to enact this plan, and then from there they'll go on and conquer the rest of the world. And Tony Stark is bedridden at this point, so he's using a robotic, or a remote-controlled suit, rather, very classic Iron Man design there, but sort of updated for the era a little bit. But this is sort of what I'm talking about with the proportions being a little wonky. Ultron's torso is like a quarter the size of his chest there. And earlier they had it where they showed off Hawkeye taking on the Goliath identity. And this isn't the best example of it, but, well, I'm going to find it a couple pages back. This isn't the best example of it, but you can kind of get an idea of, like, yeah, his chest is obscenely large compared to his arms and even his waist and stuff, and there's always these, like, scowls that U.S. Agent is wearing, which I guess fits his character just fine. This is also when Vision was in the, like, white ghost colors, which is kind of interesting. Then we have, for the Vision storyline, a very different art style. Very much still 90s. It actually looks more like a late 90s art style, kind of like Spawn or something like that, even though this was written in 1984. And the weird thing about this is it sort of reads like a crime noir piece for the first half. This is what I'm talking about getting into the Liefeld era, because that's Hank Pym there, and he has just pouches everywhere for no reason. But we sort of have the identity of Vision traced back upon, and Ultron is involved. He's not really a villain here, because the whole point of this storyline is that there's some sort of virus or something affecting all the artificial intelligence characters in the Marvel Universe at the time, and they are forgetting who they are or confusing their memories, and it's a whole sort of adventure to find out who's behind it and why they're doing this. It also adds fuel to the fire of the ever-confusing origins of Vision and, like, which characters have donated to his identity over the years. With that in mind, I think it's really weird that Vision keeps going on about how he's a machine and how he's, you know, not bound by the emotions of other humans, but then, like, every other panel he's wearing a scowl or a screaming face for some reason. I don't know. He has these sort of dreams that he doesn't entirely understand, and that plays into it. And there are points where it jumps back between the dream and the reality of things. And so it's an interesting story. I think it's probably better written than the Ultron Unbound storyline as a whole, but there is something a little weird about it trying to take itself so seriously. Ultron Unbound, I didn't feel like took itself too seriously. Like, it's kind of cheesy, it's kind of just wacky fun, and that's what I like about these older Marvel stories. Now, is this depiction of Ultron my favorite? Not necessarily. I get that these are the kind of stories we had at the time, but I certainly prefer Ultron from, like, Rage of Ultron, Age of Ultron. Even Annihilation Conquest, he was still pretty good in that, even though I don't think that storyline quite lived up to the Annihilation precursor or the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff and Thanos Imperative that came later. But with all that in mind, I think if you're looking for an easy to jump into, very much starts and finishes the story in one go, look at both Ultron and Vision, might be worth your time. It's, like I said, a little outdated, so if you're looking for something that's the most compelling story you'll ever read, this is not going to be it. But for someone like myself, who Ultron has quickly become one of my all-time favorite Marvel villains, all-time favorite comic book villains, I certainly enjoyed it. I'd like to see them do more stuff like this for future Avengers films or future Marvel films with maybe some of the Captain America villains. I know they've done some for Thanos, like they've done Thanos versus Thor and Thanos. There's some more recent standalone stories, like God Up There Listening and was it Thanos Uprising or whatever his origin story was. They did a couple of those, just sort of short one-off collections. So I think that we're going to see a little bit more of this as we get further into the Marvel films, because while the new stories are fun and all, there are people who want to read the old stories, want to know the origin stuff of these characters. Wouldn't be surprised if we see something like this for Ant-Man, because those collections are kind of hard to come by nowadays too. But you know, I think it's good for the price they pay for it. There's quite a bit here in terms of the just general thickness of the collection, and that annual issue is one of the longest single issues of anything I've read from Marvel. It's, I think, longer than any given chapter in the Infinity Gauntlet collection. I don't know how that came to be, but that I believe that's the case actually here. So there's definitely a lot that you get. Just know that it's not going to be quite the pinnacle of Marvel storytelling. But if you're looking for something that's just kind of easy, fun to read, might be worth looking at. So that's pretty much it for this review, and with that, I will see you guys next time.